Hello, and welcome back to the Review of Death, a Doctor Who podcast and your fortnightly, now weekly, home for news about Doctor Who and your reviews for Doctor Who. I cocked that up. It's too early in the morning, isn't it, Billy? It's late where you are. It's different.
Yes,
different this week.
I've succumbed to liquid breakfasts.
Lovely.
That's how depressing it is watching Doctor Who these days. I kid. How are you doing, mate? All right? Oh no! Are we in for one of those?
No. No, I'm good. How are you doing? You all right?
Yes, very well, thank you. I had my engagement party on the weekend, and we're still recovering from that. But Matt made an appearance along with Annie and Johnny. They flew all the way over with their Dalek.
Yeah.
And popped
and
up
Gizmo,
and said
he
hi.
came along and all.
And Gizmo. Gizmo came along as well. Gizmo was actually controlling the Dalek, weirdly.
Yeah.
He's
probably about the right size to be a coloured mutant.
He probably is. You should take him to a convention and take the top half off.
Take the top off, yeah. Yeah, because they probably wouldn't let dogs in a convention hall, but if it was part of a costume, they might.
I could make a joke about that. Let's. Hello, everybody in the chat. Nice to see you all.
Yes, hello. Sorry, I've not even got the chat up. I'm all over the place this morning. Let me have a look and see what we've got going on here.
And thank you, of course, to Macra as well for
thank you, Macra.
modding.
I'm so sorry to get you up early in the morning, Macra. That's very kind of you to do this. Yeah, blame him.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So, 73 yards. When did you watch this? How did you watch this at your end because of your engagement party?
I watched this on Saturday night, so probably about 6 or 7 hours after it dropped on Disney Plus and BBC iPlayer. All
right, so you kind of watched it in the actual Doctor Who slot on a Saturday evening
when Doctor Who should be watched. I looked at my phone and I was like, it's the right level of darkness outside. I'm fucking knackered. It's 6:30 p.m. It's Doctor Who time. And I was so excited. So we sat there with leftover cheese from the engagement party and we just, oh man. I mean, we're skipping ahead, but had a great time.
That sounds so depressing. Just sat there with leftover cheese and watched Doctor Who.
And a single tear rolling down my face. How did you watch it? Because you were also slightly inconvenienced by real life.
Yeah, we ended up watching it in the morning.
Yeah.
We just put it on in the morning. And I watched it again last night as well. So I have watched it twice because I think this was an episode that kind of warranted a double viewing, as we will discuss later. I watched it blurry-eyed, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. There we are. See you next week.
Thanks very much for watching. Next week is Dot and Bubble, Matt. What do you think about Dot and Bubble?
Oh God, I mean, yeah, I don't know if that's going to be my cup of tea. It looks a bit Paradise Towers-y. That's what Annie said. She said it looks like Paradise Towers, this place. Like the sort of whole alien planet thing. Yes, so 73 yards. How do we want to go into this?
I was going to say, just before we start as well, just a little bit of news, which we'd like to do at the top of the show.
Yes.
Season 2 has wrapped.
Yes, Season 2 has wrapped.
So, there you go.
Enjoy it while you can with the viewing figures.
Dalek Seth, thank you very much for the £5. Congratulations, Billy. Thank you. I like the ep, but the ending really confused me. Right. Better get back to it before my boss sees me. Just tell them that you're watching some really deep, intricate, cerebral commentary on a kids' television series, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
I'm sure.
That's the way to do it. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. So, yes, we were very excited for this one, I think.
Yeah.
It's our kind of Doctor Who. It's a folk horror.
What is it?
Half of it is a folk horror.
Well, it's about 15 minutes.
Is a modern political horror. Yes, yeah, about 15 minutes of it is a folk horror. No titles off the bat.
Not happy about that.
I bet you weren't.
It's just, that's what gets you into it. Having the music.
But
I think they were trying to go for atmosphere, but
yes,
I don't think that was, fuck that.
Is it okay though when it's not your kind of typical Doctor Who to have a non-typical Doctor Who opening.
Do you know what I think they should have done? I think after the Doctor disappeared, they should have run the titles but not put Ncuti Gatwa's name in it. And just have had Millie Gibson. Yeah.
Nice. That's a nice touch. I like that. Thank you, Jeremy Thomas Webb, for
Thank you.
I think is that an Australian dollar, $2? Thank you very much. Yes, Skinflint. I'm joking. Millie's first episode, and she aced it. Yeah, first episode she recorded.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah, Ncuti was busy sex edding.
Sex edding. And, like Stella said after we finished watching it, it struck her as an episode that they had to rush together out of an absence of Ncuti Gatwa.
Yeah.
And I don't know if rush together is the right word, but certainly it was built around that, wasn't it?
Oh, totally. Yeah. It must be quite annoying when you cast someone and you think, right, I'm dead set on this person. And then you think, you get told, oh, actually, I can't do this period. But I mean, at least Doctor Who is one of those programs where you can do episodes like this where the Doctor doesn't need to be, ever present.
I bet it was more annoying back in 1964 when you cast your leading man as Doctor Who and they go, I am off to Ibiza. And then they wander off and fuck off for 3 weeks. Gordon,
and they come back with a tan.
I think. Thank you for the 50 Czech krona. Sorry, I have to go soon. Busy day, but I love this episode. Dare I say it? The best episode since Heaven Sent. 10 out of 10 easily. Matt,
wow.
What do we think of that?
Well, Gordon, gosh. I mean, I don't know if I go that far. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I get that far. But gosh, yeah, wow. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, talking about Millie Gibson, I mean, how amazing. She was amazing. She was very, very good. I'm now sold on Ruby Sunday. I keep wanting to call her Ruby Road. Why do I do that? Yeah, Ruby Sunday, she was very good. Just really gave her a chance to shine. I think the problem is, because Ncuti Gatwa is such an expressive performer and everything he does is so pow and big and your eyes are just like automatically drawn to him. I think that sometimes she can get a bit overshadowed by him, or maybe the way that they sort of bounce off each other is a bit more. I don't know. They've just got very particular energy when they're sort of bouncing off each other. I guess it's that like mischievous school kids thing that they kept talking about in all the interviews. But this was really nice to be able to see her sort of really become an actual person. I've said this a few times over the last few weeks that I don't get the sense of her as a human being compared to Rose or maybe Martha or Donna, for instance. But this week I really sort of felt it, and it was interesting because there were moments where I think emotional beats that would have hit a lot harder if we'd have had more time with maybe Ruby and her mum, or if perhaps Ruby's family had had more time with the Doctor, because I feel like there are moments in this where stuff gets said and you kind of think, I've not really seen these people interact that much to really get a real strong sense about things. Maybe not so much between Ruby and her mum, but there was that whole exchange where Ruby's mum's talking about the Doctor and says that stuff about, he's just a normal bloke pottering in his shed. And I thought, if this was Series 1, 2005, I can imagine Jackie saying that and really feeling the sort of weight behind those words, because we've seen so much of Jackie interacting with the Doctor by this point. Whereas here, the revelation that the Doctor's an alien and all this sort of stuff basically happens off screen. So we don't get to see the impact of that. We don't get the slap around the face and all this sort of stuff. Not that Carla probably would have done that, but, I feel like, if we'd have just had that scene, it might have just felt like, okay, I now the commentary that she is giving on the Doctor feels slightly more earned. You know what I mean?
Yes, I totally get that. It was lovely to see Carla and Cherry back in the fold.
Yeah, it's a shame Cherry was barely in it.
Yeah, it was a shame Cherry was barely in it. She's definitely my favourite of the kind of kitchen sink characters that we've had from Russell under this new tenure. But I think, if we were looking at this as a 13 episode run, we probably would have had that moment on screen.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, we're halfway through the season already, which seems mental.
Unbelievable. Jamie Bate, thank you for the $1.99. Loved it like a bad dream.
Oh, thank you,
That
Jamie.
was something I wanted to mention.
I've got one of his TARDISes over my shoulder. Thank you, Jamie.
Oh, send us one of those out here, please. That's one of the things I really liked about this story, and I know it was something that really split opinion on Twitter, especially, was the kind of dream logic to this.
Right.
And I'm not saying that you have to be a David Lynch fan to appreciate dream logic or a Doctor Who episode like this.
Yeah.
But that's very much my cup of tea as well when it comes to sort of slightly skewed storytelling, and that it is up to interpretation. And I know a lot of people were posting that David Lynch, can you elaborate on that? No. Around on Twitter. But I think to tell a story that doesn't have a definitive, and that's how the cookie crumbled, finish, I think was really nice. So I liked the dream logic that Jamie sort of mentioned there. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the fact that the ending is ambiguous by any means. Maybe I would have liked a slightly bit more clarity, but I mean, it's all open to interpretation. I mean, I guess we'll get to it later on, but I mean, people on Twitter have probably already seen what my other half posted about the story.
Yes, very interesting.
Which I think is probably I'll read it out later on, but I think that's probably a good summary of what it might be. I mean, who knows?
Definitely.
Because I know I was certainly a bit confused. I was like, oh, so was the lady old Ruby all along? And then it was watching Unleashed. It was like, oh no, they are two different actresses. They just look very similar. Two old ladies look similar. So, but I think it's one of those stories where it depends on what sort of mood you're in. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you can watch one of those stories and be like, oh, I love the fact that we don't know what the ending is, which is how I sort of felt in the morning. And then when I watched it last night, when I was more sort of ready for bed, I was sort of a bit like, oh, I can't. I'm too tired to think about what this means.
Funny. That was how I felt watching it the first time. Was like I actually don't want something that I have to listen really carefully to the techno battle. I'm happy just to let whatever's happening and the atmosphere, like you say before, kind of wash over me.
Yeah.
And let the vibes do the storytelling rather than know. Then I did the diddly donk and it went into Pinky Plonk and you are shyster. There's a robot gone or whatever.
Yeah.
Pun Master, thank you for the £10.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great blend of sci-fi and fantasy. Simple concept, shot well. Running away called back to the Curse of Clyde Langer. I saw a lot of
I did see
online. Unit great, topical after news this week. PM very real and genuine worry. I have to say, we're skipping ahead a little bit here, but I think that was the weakest element of the story to me.
Same.
Was the political kind of turn left thing.
Yeah.
Because
it felt very much like they kind of wanted to either have their cake and eat it or didn't know what I mean, it was a bait and switch by saying, oh, this is folk horror, and then being like, no, it's not, it's turn left. Which is fine. I almost think that had it have been one or the other all the way through, perhaps it might have been a better it might have been a better story. Or a more cohesive story.
Or if it had been a two-parter, but then I guess you've got the Doctor missing for 2 episodes halfway through the season. But then, given the fact that Disney is the bread and butter for this show now, you could have easily, with adding the deleted scenes back in, because I think there was a lot cut from this story.
Right, okay.
Adding that stuff back in maybe could have given you 2 25 or 2 30-minute halves, and it would have been presented better as a two-parter. I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that, like, wouldn't that have been cool to have had episode 1 full folk horror, big cliffhanger, and then you tune in next time, and then everything's squiffy, and it's this different future, and you're like, wow, what has gone on here? It would have been a bit of a mind mess, but Yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah, I think in terms of the political stuff, you know, they made a big stink about this Roger Ap William bloke.
Yes.
About he's a wrong un. Now, obviously, you know, the Doctor says at the start that he's causes almost nuclear war.
He's Welsh Hitler.
He's Welsh Hitler. Yeah, but I don't really get the sense that we saw enough of that. You know, we're told it's a lot of people telling us he's a wrong un. You know, all right, obviously he's abused this woman in some way, you know, and she just turns around and says, oh, yeah, he's insane. But I was like, yeah, but I want to see that.
Yeah, I think that was so half-baked that it shouldn't have been included because, you know, not that, like you say, you want to see that, but also you can't because it's Doctor Who. So maybe allude to him doing something different. I also didn't get the whole, you know, are they one of them? Marty is a boy's name. I didn't get that. I get they were trying to allude maybe to some kind of, you know, bigotry going on there, maybe like a anti-trans thing, but then for them to have I don't know what the right thing to say is, but to have abused them in some way off screen, I don't know, it just seemed like a bit of an unnecessary thing to include. Like, also this guy is supposed to be a mystical supernatural being. He's called Mad Jack. Like, why, you know, just have his eyes glow or something just out of the corner of someone's eye or something. Is he?
I think I think that's part of the ambiguity of the story, because the first time round when the Mad Jack connection came up, I was like, oh right, so there is some sort of mystical force at play here in terms of, you know, this villain. But I don't necessarily think that's the case on a second viewing. I think it is literally just a coincidence, and I think Ruby puts 2 and 2 together and goes, oh, hang on, that's the same thing. If I get rid of him, if I sort him out, all this will end and the Doctor will come back. And obviously that doesn't happen. So I think it's just coincidence more than anything, rather than him being like a weird being. But yeah, I think it would have just been nice to have seen him do something, had some sort of an outburst, or just been desperately horrible to someone, you know. And I think you can do that in a variety of ways. And yeah, I think we just needed to see him as a baddie rather than kept being told, no, he's a baddie. And we watched The Unleashed last night, and it was like, oh yeah, we spoke to the actor about what it's like being a Doctor Who baddie. I was like, fucking hell, Doctor Who baddie? Come on now. Really? You know, he is not a Doctor Who baddie. He's just some bloke, you know? He's hardly up there with the bloody Magnus Grills and the Sharaz Jacks, is he?
I don't think that's what his lower third said on Doctor Who Unleashed, though, is it?
What? Doctor Who baddie? Bloke. Just some bloke. Or Welsh Hitler, as you've
Welsh
dubbed
Hitler.
him.
Welsh Hitler. So yeah, of course, yeah. We start off on that coast, and we have all those messages about Mad Jack, and we have the runes, which I think John Granson on Twitter was saying reminded him of a snowflake. The kind of shape of it.
Yeah,
which might be a kind of interesting kind of visual callback. Mm-hmm. And the Doctor does the line about the land between the war between the land and the sea.
Yeah,
which now kind of makes me think that Russell just liked that name, and it's got nothing to do with the Sea Devils, this spin-off.
Yeah,
it's just the papers went Sea Devil. You know.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. I think
I've been baited there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the whole them using Torchwood as the way to disguise Doctor Who when it came out the first time round, isn't it? And then going, oh, actually, that'd be a good name for a spin-off.
It would ruin it. So just, you know, file for a company called the Paul McGann 8th Doctor Adventures that are finally happening Limited.
Yeah,
that would be giving the game away a little bit. But I love that whole thing he did about coastlines and the coast, and especially with what happens, the conversations in the pub about whales, about you know, this is a mythical place where the laws of nature don't apply because it's neither the land nor is it the sea.
Yeah.
And all that. I liked that whole thing.
Yeah, no, that was great. Yeah, I mean, I love the setup of it. I mean, like you said at the start, that's sort of our bread and butter for Doctor Who. Growing up on bloody Tom Baker stories and the demons and all this sort of stuff. That's the sort of Doctor Who that we love. So yeah, that was great. And obviously the conceit that this woman, this thing, was always 73 yards away is very It Follows. If you've seen that film, it's like It Follows, but I'll only follow you so closely. Yeah, so that, I mean, I loved all that, and the stuff in the pub was great. I said it last week, and bugger me, was I right? Dame Shan Phillips totally wasted in this story.
Well, wasted,
I mean, she was excellent in the moment, but just for those like few minutes, I was like, please, come on, she's one of the best.
Electric,
she deserves more.
Like,
yeah, she was
absolutely
so good.
fantastic in that scene, and I really like that whole sequence about we're not in the Dark Ages, we're getting Christianity next week, and, and all of that, and I loved it because I think we mentioned it on the podcast last week, maybe, that whole idea of the one place of security in the middle of nowhere, and the one place that would still have its lights on at a godforsaken hour where you can go in and get warm and confide in people is a little Welsh pub.
Yep.
And just like what's it called? American Werewolf in London.
Mm-hmm.
They go in for some sort of sense of security, and Ruby can't find it there, and they're all really. I was saying to Stella and her mum, how hostile they were to her.
Yeah.
And her mum sort of said, well, they weren't hostile to her. They were just kind of pulling her leg. But, that's
not what you want, is it?
That's not what you want. No, when you're clearly distressed and the people in there are doing, well, here's just some silly English girl that's come in and has started taking the piss out of us, and so we're gonna respond in kind and not help her out.
Well,
it was really threatening, wasn't it? It was like one of those kind of your stomach drops kind of moments, like, oh god, she can't even get help there. Like there's nowhere for her to go.
In my notes, I put, it's a shame it wasn't a Base Under Siege story because they all deserve to die. They're all assholes.
I did see somebody else on Twitter say, I wish that the episode had been set entirely in the pub.
Yeah.
And I got that as well.
Yeah,
I think
that could have
been fantastic.
I mean, it would have been midnight, retread a little bit, but I think that would have been good fun. Because those stories work. Those stories always work. So that would have been good. But no, I can. You do not warm to these characters. Maybe the guy who had to leave and then spoke to the woman and then shit his pants. Yeah. He was all right, but everyone else there.
Is that what she makes you do?
Shit your pants.
We're that far away that we don't actually see it.
I think so. I think that's the twist.
That's why
Carla, there's always a twist at the end.
Yeah, Carla had to jump in the taxi. She was like, "Fuck, I need some more knickers." Get me to Primark.
Do you know what? I got so confused when Ruby got. Every time I watched it and Ruby got on the train, I got so confused about the geography because I keep forgetting she's supposed to live in London, and I kept thinking, oh, she's just getting the train from Cardiff to Temple Meads.
But she was on the GWR.
Yeah.
So she must have jumped on at, let's say, jumped off on at Milford or Newport, and she was on her way in.
It was. I was like, oh no, she doesn't live in Bristol.
Yeah, it was nice to see it again. It was. I loved. There were so many great bits of imagery in this, and we'll kind of get to them as we go through. But that was one of my favorite bits. Was her looking out the window and seeing her. I thought that was fantastic.
Very cool.
So we returned to
London.
And
before we get to London, Susan Twist this week, Hitchhiker. Yes. She was really good. I really like her. She's a very good actress. She's very adaptable at all these different parts. She's been doing it really well. And interesting that this was the first time that Ruby kind of clocked that. Hang on, I know you. I mean, and obviously, why wouldn't you? After everything that happened with the ambulances in the previous episode, that's bound to stick in your head. That face and that voice. Yeah. Really good. I hope the payoff is, going to be decent.
Matt, it's Doctor Who. Come on, we know it's not. I really liked the staging of her turning to Ruby and saying, "Do you need a doctor?" Because that almost looks like that's straight down the barrel of the lens. That almost looks like a fourth wall break.
Yeah.
And talking of fourth wall break, we see Mrs. Flood again.
Yes.
I thought it was very interesting how some of the way that things are shot in this series. I immediately kind of think, right, how's this going to factor into a flashback? And what was Mrs. Flood doing coming out of her front door and going down into the basement? I kind of, what if we see the reverse of that and she's going down into her TARDIS, or she's got somebody down there or whatever? And the way she was like, nothing to do with me, as if it's like, I don't actually factor into my scheme yet, so I'll let you just get on with whatever's going on here with the Doctor, and I'll see you next week, kind of thing.
Yeah, interesting. There's obviously Russell posted something on Instagram, I think, didn't he, saying about, or like count the doors or something like that, didn't he? About her house. And was it something to do with the costume as well, that she's wearing the same costume that she wore in the Christmas special? So I think maybe there is something going on there. Maybe she does have a TARDIS, who knows? Weird. There's lots going on. And we don't seem to be any closer to unraveling that mystery, which is fine. I mean, we're halfway through the series, so we don't expect answers yet. But like I said, I hope and pray that the payoff is decent. I hope it's not one of those things where we go, oh, I don't want a damp squib.
Cross your fingers. A shot. I think another thing I really liked about this story was within that dream logic. You have that thing, and it happens all the times in TV shows as well, where if something kind of mythical or magical or weird happens, and you think, well, what I would have done is I would have got my mate to get on the phone and walk up to her. And I love the fact they included that, because that almost seemed like
that's like the most logical thing.
Workshop, and somebody going, well, that's what I would have done.
Of course,
And the fact that the phone crackles just beforehand, and all of that, or the way that they just kept that whole thing at arm's reach, and they kept Ruby from getting closer to the truth or getting help, added to the thing I really took away from my experience watching this for the first time, is that it's the first time in I don't know how long that Doctor Who actually had me on the edge of my seat, like physically leaning into it, going, fuck. And I'll tell you the moment that it I didn't fall off, but it was as close as I could have been. And it was that just ramping up of, well, yeah, of course you do that next. And it's Carla, this will be fine. And then suddenly you realize it's not fine, and this is getting worse. And okay, Kate's here, units here. We're gonna get, this is the kind of three quarters of the way through. We've got Unit turning up. We're gonna now cut to the Black Archive, and the woman's gonna be chained up, and they're gonna do something to make her talk, and we'll get the the why and the how. But the fact that we don't, and that Kate turns on Ruby is another one that just confound, oh God, this is a nightmare situation. It really had that seeping dread. There's no good in this at all.
I almost wonder if it would have been more beneficial if we'd have had a Unit story beforehand, so that we could have had like if there was a strong bond between Ruby and Kate, just to really make that gut punch of when she turns on her as well. But I mean, I loved all of that. I thought that was really well done. Kate was great. I know on this podcast, we have a tendency to take the piss somewhat with Kate Stewart, but since the giggle, we've had nothing but praise for the way that Russell's written Kate and made
She's got a character.
Well, yeah, that's it. This is it. So, really good. It'll be interesting to see how she factors into things later on in the finale.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great scene. And obviously one of the earliest scenes that we saw being shot, wasn't it, I think, when the series was initially being filmed.
I liked Gemma Redgrave coming out afterwards and saying, it's very hard to act when there are people across the road dressed as characters from Doctor Who watching. So maybe take that as an indication, location hunters, that you're not welcome.
Yeah.
Get back in your mystery machine and fuck off. Anyway.
And I love, there was a really, the reaction that I really liked from Ruby was when she picked up the cup and she threw it on the floor in a temper. And I thought, because that's what you would do. You would be fucking frustrated that you'd just be like, you know.
End of your tether, absolutely.
Yeah. No, really good. Great stuff.
So what do we think the woman was saying?
God knows. I was going to try and think of something humorous, but it's too early in the morning.
I wonder if it was just whatever would make that individual.
I know what it was. You're gonna be. You never work again, and you're gonna be going to conventions for the rest of your life. Great run.
Get out of here. Maybe. I mean, yeah. Get on. Yeah. I was gonna make a joke about someone's employment on the show, but I probably shouldn't. Yeah. I like the fact that we don't know. I just assume that she tailors herself to that individual.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, I think so. But
yeah.
I mean, Russell has said that he will never tell what was said, but
because there isn't anything.
No, there probably isn't anything.
I'm sure that there is. He would have imagined, to make her adoptive mother leg it and abandon her again, must have told her something. Ben Lindsay says she was saying Shiraz Tumal Balor, quite possibly.
I think it was you'll have to spend the rest of your days with Ian Levine listening to Doctor in Distress on a loop.
That's why I get the scowl from Carla now. That's exactly the face I would have handled. So yeah, then suddenly we get this, quite severe time jumps in which, God, she looks good for her age, doesn't she, Ruby?
I put in my things. I was like, she's too baby faced to pass for 40.
I tell you what. No, I won't actually. I'm engaged now. I liked that,
that came to an end very quickly.
Millie shared a photo of herself on Instagram, and it was like MILF Ruby or something. And I was looking at it, and I was like, I mean, mate, they've just put some frumpy glasses on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they put a bit of prosthetic on her forehead as well, like maybe to add a few lines or something. But I mean, she didn't look 40. And they obviously dressed her more mature, but yeah, it's hard, isn't it? How else are you going to do it?
True. Just make her racist in her old age. I don't know. I mean, she does join the Albion party. So we go to, which, very, very apt. Doctor Who was heralded by an Aurora Borealis, and now this episode comes after the announcement of a general election in the United Kingdom, which is funky. Hard pivot. I'm not sure it quite sticks the landing in that regard.
No, I know what you mean.
Straight to that. To think that, I mean, it was nice they kept peppering throughout. This is still going on.
Yes.
Which was grand. But I would have loved it if in the political campaign office, if Ruby was chatting to the bloke and you could just see the woman doing her hand movements in the background. And some, just completely unprompted, some bloke goes over and
just talks to her.
Fucking throws his papers in the air and runs out. But yeah, I don't know if I quite buy the pivot, but I'm glad that something else was going on. If we're not going to go full folk horror, at least it was doing something different, because it kind of sold the threat of the woman seeping into her everyday life, no matter what she does or how she changes. She can't go abroad. You know, I'm not going to go on a boat because she might drown, and there might be a connection between us, and I might die. Like I bought all of that rationale.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if she'd got on a plane, if it would be like the Twilight Zone episode, and she'd just be on the wing doing the. It's not 73 yards.
The Master's TARDIS in Spyfall. She'd just be like floating alongside, just exactly where you'd expect it to be. So the whole Roger Ap Gwilliam thing. I mean,
I hope he comes back, because obviously there's room.
I was thinking
there's room for him to come back, and that's kind of what I was hoping to hear on Unleashed, was like Russell to go, "Ooh, we've not seen the last of him," sort of thing. But he didn't say that, and it sort of feels like, well, although in this timeline she manages to stop nuclear devastation from happening or whatever, in the actual timeline where the Doctor comes back and none of that stuff happened, we know that this guy is still out there. So hopefully he will come back and feature in some way. And if he does, maybe we'll get to see more of his villainous side.
Maybe, if Russell knew he had all this planned as an episode, maybe we could have had something in the Star Beast. Sylvia's watching TV, and as a natural racist, she would vote for the Albion Party. Yeah. And we just see him.
I don't like the Welsh, but I do like this young man.
And she just goes, the Doctor just goes, terrible person or something, and what a terrible bloke, It would have been nice if there had been a seed planted earlier on that he's an in-universe
like a vote Saxon, because there was a lot of little references to Saxon, before we got to the final reveal. I think that would have been good. I think that would have been fun. So I hope we see more of him in a beneficial way. Oh, hang on. There's someone's coming. Someone's coming. I don't know if the people at home heard that little jingle of. Well, you didn't hear it, no? Because
what's the jingle? I missed it.
You'll have to go back and you have to go back and listen. Did people hear that? Did everyone hear that little? I'll do it again.
I'm listening back to it to see if it pops up.
Did it work?
We'll see.
Did it happen?
What is it?
Yes.
It did.
What is it? I missed it.
I just played it again as well. You can't hear it, unfortunately. You have to go back.
I will do. Let me talk to my friend.
I'll pass you over to Victor Meldrew.
Hello, Boyle. I was just chatting to Welsh Hitler. How are you?
Hello, my son. How are you?
I'm fine.
Got to stop those accents. God almighty.
That's all right. It's only the Welsh. Well, how are we?
It's only the Welsh. It's only
they'll forgive me. Right, okay. How are we?
So, I'm very, very well, thank you.
How does it feel to have been engaged and then to have been not engaged very quickly?
Yeah, well, I
after
just
your little comment.
Thank you for the message, Stel, to tilt my mic slightly because it's blocking my face. Johnny,
hello.
Look,
and can I just say one thing? People in the comments are saying that I was still asleep or something. Let me tell you, I'm up at the crack of dawn. I don't sleep well.
Dawn?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one day. I'm up early. 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm awake, guys, every day. And I'm up and about. So, I'm not hanging about in bed like this lot. Right, anyway, let's carry on.
I'm here doing a bloody podcast.
Yeah, usually. Right, okay.
Well, I'm not. I'm up at 7 o'clock, if not early.
No.
Right, so
Johnny,
talk about the story, shall I? Say a few things?
Let's have a chat. So,
yeah.
I want you to... So, Boom, better?
This Boom better?
Last week, Boom better?
I spoke to you about Boom last week, didn't I?
Good, yes, you did.
Yeah.
And now we're here with... I'm just checking that we're all right.
Yeah.
And then 73 yards.
Yeah.
Look, it's a folk horror. It's more along the line of the things we like.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I wish there was a bit more of it, though. It was good. I enjoyed it. Overall. I felt more of... If it was set in the pub more, that would have been good. I liked the pub scene. Yeah. Shame it was in like 10, 15 minutes. I think more of that. If you're going to do that, do that. I think the political side of things is fine, but weird to sort of like intersperse it with that in that story. I don't know. But, it was fine, and, it was good. The ending I thought was a bit rushed. And I was a bit unsure of the ending, as a lot of people were, a bit ambiguous. But hey, it was fine. It was a good story. And she was great. Yeah. I've got to say, she was very, very good. And yeah, I think she's a good companion.
Great.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was a good story.
Brilliant. Yeah, because I think that the pub thing, obviously when we were talking about it last week, Matt, we were saying it put us in the mind of the demons.
Yes, well, that was what I was hoping for, more like that. Yeah, obviously.
Were you happy with the kind of, because I think, we're going to kind of go on to talk about this, is the lack of a cohesive ending, the lack of somebody being sat down and said, well, the reason this happened is because of this. She's from this planet, and this is what she was saying to make people scarp her. Was that something?
It was a bit annoying.
A bit let down by?
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, ambiguity is fine now and again. It's Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be too,
I don't think you always need an answer. I mean, look at stories like Midnight, we don't really know. I mean, we know there is something out there, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah, I wasn't too perturbed by it. But yeah, it was fine. I still think Jinx Monsoon episode has been my favourite so far.
Wow.
Yeah, I still think I prefer that because it was so different.
Yeah,
that one, and I did really like that one.
Good.
And they're excellent. Yeah, I think they played the part very well. But this was a good story.
We're talking to a seasoned Drag Race fan here, so
absolutely, you certainly are.
Yeah, so of course you loved it.
Miss Vanjie. And he'd be laughing. And he'd be laughing now.
She'll be in the other room cackling.
She'll be cackling.
There's a delay, but we'll hear her cackle in a minute.
Well, you'll hear it for in a moment. We got a $5 Australian from Jeremy Thomas Webb saying, "Hey Johnny, always good to see you."
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Pleasure to see him. The
you
real
won't
question,
see that
Johnny.
$5.
The real question, Johnny, is: will you be voting for Albion in the upcoming general election?
I certainly will be.
I thought you might.
It's funny that this aired, isn't it, with the election coming up?
Isn't it?
Yeah, wow.
Bonkers.
What coincidence.
Very prophetic.
Yeah, very.
Did you see what was that Russell T Davies series? The one about the world ending.
Oh, Annie made a very good point though. I must interrupt. Annie said a very good point.
Yeah.
She said when it went into the future, the fashion didn't change.
Yeah, that's true. 20 years.
20 years, yeah. And that was very I never noticed it, but that was a good
she
point.
She still had an old iPhone and all of that. It would have been nice to have seen a little shift.
Something, a little hint
ahead of time.
Yeah. Watching it back last night, there were moments when she's looking out the window, you can see that there's like drones and things like floating around outside. So they did little things, and like the street lamps are slightly different. So they did things in that regard.
Architecturally, maybe.
Yeah. And I think one of the tellies is like really sort of, it's like almost just like a sheet of glass or something, there's no back to it. So they did stuff like that. But I think it would have been nice to have just seen something to show that, fashion has moved on or whatever.
It's tricky with the fashion though, because like, what do you do? Do you do what they do in Back to the Future 2 and give Doc Brown, with that like translucent tie? It's like, how far into the realms of sci-fi do you go with looks
just
like that?
Just subtle changes, I think.
I think like Annie sort of said
weird.
Last night, she said, just like maybe on the suits, like the lapels are like up rather than, traditional lapels, or you just start taking in more multicultural influences and bringing that into the clothing. A bit like with Blade Runner,
great idea.
How Blade Runner's got like a very Asian influence over the city and stuff. So maybe something like that.
Right, I'm going to have to go because domani vado a Roma, which means tomorrow I go to Rome.
Oh,
yes.
Very good. Grazie.
Grazie. Yeah. Va bene. I go with 31 school kids, so say a prayer for me.
He hasn't kidnapped them.
I haven't kidnapped them.
Parents, though.
31 kids, year 8s and year 9. So everybody just think of me tomorrow going to Rome with 2 of my colleagues. 3:00 in the morning, we've got to be at school to go to Gatwick. Oh, so yeah.
God bless you, my child.
Thank you. And we're seeing Papa Francesco as well on Wednesday.
Oh, lovely. Send my regards.
And we had Papa John's last night.
Papa John's last night. Yeah. Very good.
Oh, we love it.
Very good. Anyway, nice to see you all, and take care,
Lovely
everybody.
to see you, Johnny.
And
thank you very much,
hope
mate.
your engagement party went well. Did you like your video?
It did. Everybody loved it. They were pissing themselves at it.
Good.
It was great. They loved the Dalek. They loved seeing
brilliant.
you guys.
Good. Lovely. Right, well, have a good week. And
all the
ciao.
best.
Grazie.
Thank
ciao.
you, mate.
Arrivederci.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Baba da Boopy.
There we go. That was Johnny. That was
Baba
Johnny.
da fucking Boopy. Lovely to see him.
Yeah. Dear.
Now, yes. So let's talk a little bit about that ending, because I think we've reached the point with this story where all of the ambiguity has sort of been brushed away. We're happy with it being the way it is.
Yeah.
It's a Doctor Who story. It has to have some kind of a resolution. We have to defeat the baddie. And so I thought that whole setup with the football pitch, which had been nicely foreshadowed in the pub on the screens, I thought. Shame they were at Cardiff City Stadium, obviously. But I liked she's perfectly aligned herself. Oh my God, she's gonna, and that creeping realization of what's gonna happen. It made sense. In outside of the fact that it was very dream logic based, that was like I can see what she's doing. This is good.
I gotta say, I called it as soon as she sees him on the telly and signs up. I was like, oh, she's gonna try and get 73 yards away from him so that he talks to that old woman.
Nice.
So I was happy with that. But yeah, it was set up well, that whole ending. Although Jonathan kept saying they'd have shot her before then.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't have just been saying, get off the grass. They'd have fucking put some bullets in her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost thought that might happen. I almost thought, they're going to go like really years and years with this. And then just as she's about to, solve it, she gets shot.
Yeah. That would have been good.
Not in a kids show.
Yeah. Not in a kids show, of course not. But we will discuss, probable coercion and sexual assault. I thought, I thought that was really nicely done. Again, I didn't expect much more than this, but to have at least seen on the news him, resigning and that's the end of the story. He's been sent packing, was a very, kind of modern Who resolution of right, we need to get out of here and move on.
Yeah.
And the fact that it just kept going. I mean, when that caption was thrown up, 40 years later, I was like, fuck. And okay, so it's got to be a loop thing, but how does this happen unless she's the woman? And that for me was when the penny dropped of, right, okay. But still, even up to that moment, and I think for me personally, that was when I was on the edge of my seat, was her in her hospital bed.
Yeah.
Seeing the woman with her back to her in the room. That was such a great bit of creepy.
Really
imagery.
creepy. Yeah.
And then the other penny dropped of going, right, this is the first time Doctor Who's done a ghost story. And it is like an M.R. James ghost story of Christmas. It is so, Whistle and I'll Come. It is so The Signalman.
Yeah.
Even, the way the lights keep going up and down. I mean, that's just so cool. And really creepy, I thought. And then that final shot, the POV of the grasping old hands.
Yeah.
And,
creepy.
Just really creepy and so cool. I loved it. Loved that whole bit.
Yeah, that was great. And I was kind of like you, because I was like, oh wait, she was the old lady the whole time. That was my thinking. And I mean, I think you could probably read it that way if you wanted to, because I mean, we never see the old woman's face. And it could just be that they're like, well, we had to get a different actress because old Ruby was, maybe she was too old to be out on the bloody moors of Wales in the freezing cold all day,
Like Gandhi in Red Dwarf.
Yeah, exactly. In his nappy. Yeah. So I think you could potentially read it that way, that it was her, because Annie and I were discussing it last night, and we sort of said, what is it when she sees her at the end? She sees her before they've even stepped in the thing, and it's almost like, did she not the first time round? Did she not get back there in time? And she just sort of missed them, and so that's why they stepped into the thing. So I think you could read it like that. This is what Annie posted on Twitter. Yesterday. She posted a big thing which got a lot of traction. So she said, the more I think about it, the more I think the woman is Ruby's fear of abandonment personified. No reason why she's there, no explanation as to why everyone she speaks to abandons Ruby. They just senselessly do, which is what Ruby fears happened to her as a baby. This woman shows Ruby what her life could play out as if all the people around her abandon her. The doctor, her mum, any support she has. It shows her lonely future life. And then, when she's done, brings her back to a place where she has all of that love and companionship. And while it would be cruel for Ruby to remember it all, she has a faint memory of it. Perhaps a memory which makes her appreciate the love she has in her life now. Perhaps this is a huge stretch, but it makes me enjoy the end of the episode a lot more. And I think it does work like that. I think you can certainly read it as, maybe this is just, a personification of her fears. And is it this sort of mystical power sort of trying to teach her a lesson? Who knows? Who knows? I think there's so many different ways we can read it, which I think is quite fun because, I mean, it allows us to have all these discussions.
Totally. I mean, that is the thing. Like, the warning thing, you know, the kind of... when they were in the pub, you know, they laughed about the Mad Jack thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, disturbing the runes, you know, they took that quite seriously. The fairy circle thing.
Yeah.
And afterwards, it was kind of like, you've just been given a fucking extended lifelong warning about not messing with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And this isn't the woman from the planet Wubanobolus, you know, and they stood, that is their job, is they stalk you like a weeping angel has a kind of silent assassin thing.
Yeah.
It's just that you don't fuck with that kind of stuff. And those are the consequences if you do. No rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
Just Welsh folk horror. And I loved Annie's explanation. I think that works so well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love. Well done.
I think she smashed it. I think she's absolutely smashed it.
A few people said, "Oh, thank you for explaining it where Russell couldn't."
But that's the dream logic thing, you know. That is the David Lynch thing. It's you take out of it whatever you want to take out of it. You know, if you think too hard about the interpretation or more the intention behind what you're seeing rather than what you're taking away from it in the moment as a feeling, not that you're getting strings and reams of technobabble telling you exactly what happened and what the consequences are.
Yeah.
You know, that was what this episode was about. It was more the feeling of it, you know.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. One thing though, with that whole kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that she becomes the woman, or, you know, whatever that whole thing was the inference was. Do you think it slightly muddies the water a little bit with all the other threads we've got dangling about with Ruby? Because, you know, we have the snow crop up in this episode again. You know, we have the whole foundling thing, and a little bit like that classic Stephen Moffat, the impossible girl, you know, the girl in the tight skirt, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think it kind of muddies the water slightly that she's already something or already someone?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Who knows? This could be like one of those things where maybe in the finale, when everything is revealed, you know, perhaps then there might even be a callback to this, and we'll be like, oh, hang on, that means this. Probably not, but you never know. You never know with Doctor Who. So yeah, I mean, perhaps it's all connected. Perhaps there's more to it than we think. I don't know.
But I mean, given the fact that she's forgotten it, unless she gets something that triggers her again to remembering, I went through all of that waiting for you kind of thing with the Doctor.
I think that was it. I think it would have been nice to have almost had a moment where she sort of really, I mean, obviously she sort of has that niggling feeling in the back of her head of like, no, I've been here before. But it would have been nice to have really sort of got the sense of like, actually, she kind of remembers everything that happened. And maybe that's the punishment. Is that, okay, you remember the lifetime of being on your own and having this shitty life. So watch yourself when you next go for a walk.
In Wales.
In Wales,
this happens to everybody. Honestly, this genuinely, my great grandma's got stories about this happening to her.
Yeah.
You know? So we are halfway through the series, Matt. Let's give ourselves a chance just to score this. Okay. And then I think what we might do just before we wrap up is have a look at some of the comments we got on Twitter from people, because we asked, you know, we're halfway through the run now. How are we feeling about it? So out of 10?
Out of 10, it's difficult because I feel like I shot myself in the foot earlier on in the series by what I gave stuff, because I think maybe I should have given Devil's Cord like 6.5, and maybe Boom should have been 6, because I think I gave it 5 last week, and I was like, maybe it's better than 5. I think. I think this is probably a good, probably about 6 as well. I think I put these two on a par. Like Johnny said, I still kind of enjoyed Devil's Cord most of all. But I think maybe had this story decided to be one thing or the other, it probably would have been higher. But I think because there's that kind of the sort of conflict with like, oh, I want to do this, but I also want to do that. And I think both sides kind of suffer a little bit because of it. You know, you don't really get the full years and years turn left thing that, you know, Russell does so well. And you don't get the folk horror-y scariness that he also has done well in the past as well.
Yes.
You know, so I kind of feel like, oh, if you'd have just chose one or the other, you could have had a real banger. And I still think this is a really good story. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, I think I'll give this one 6.5 as well.
I'm going to give it an 8.
Wow.
Because I think that I can forgive the fact that it's kind of a half-baked Years and Years, kind of a half-baked Midnight.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, the dream logic aspect of it, I loved. It didn't have to explain things to you.
Yeah.
Everybody has kind of taken something different away from it. When the reviews said in the lead up, which you never really want to put too much stock in, that it's an episode that will stick with you. Now, I think of things like that. Things that have stuck with me in terms of media are creepy things like Ghost Watch.
Yeah.
Or like the Devil of Christmas episode of Inside Number 9.
Yeah.
Those sort of like real turn left, and not literally the episode, but those real sort of swerves.
Yes, yeah.
Fuck, you know, holy shit.
Yeah.
And again, maybe I'm slow. Maybe I don't read the imagery or the text enough when I'm watching it. But that final kind of realization of fuck, it's her in the hospital room. That image of her with her back to her is still kind of seared onto my brain at the moment.
Okay.
And I think for an episode to have had that kind of effect, and for me to actually be kind of leaning forward on the sofa, like, holy shit, you know, and I did have a couple of those out loud moments.
Okay.
That's got to be worth something.
Yeah.
So by far and away, I think best episode so far of this series, and I would have to give it an 8 or an 8.5.
Okay.
Right now.
Interesting. Yeah.
I just thought fucking magic. Totally my kind of Doctor Who.
Cool. Okay.
Even without the title sequence, because I think, you know, if you imagine the kind of ooey-oos playing just before that initial scene where they're all taking it so seriously, you know, even kind of a bit of Nshute's love of astrology and the kind of the mythical and all of that seems to be coming through in the respect that he's paying to this rune.
I put that in my thing, you know, where Ruby says like, oh, he'd never. Oh, my lights are. Oh my god, look at this.
She's coming.
She's coming for me. Ah! My lights are going fucky. I'll turn you off. No, I did laugh because she was like, oh no, my mate would never. He wouldn't disrespect anything or do anything like that unless you're an Anglican, because fuck those guys. That was my thought.
Totally. Oh God. Well done.
They'll never live that down.
Macro with the £10. Thank you very much. We should be giving you that money.
Yeah.
Agreed 100% with Annie's thoughts. It was a very solid episode, and Millie did a great job on her own, especially for the first time. Absolutely.
Yeah,
for her first
Macro.
time on set. And you know, her Instagram post, you know, maybe a kind of prophetic in a way of saying how much she learnt doing that episode, and you know, that was her first script, and thanking Russell for giving her that script, because fuck, you know, if you come onto set that day and you get your sides, I think reading that script, you know, there's something special about this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so on Twitter we asked the Rodders around the world what they think of this current series, because we are halfway through, and we asked for your thoughts on the incumbent TARDIS team and the series so far. King Peladon, pure joy once you tone them down a notch or two. In Space Babies, they were too frenetic or hyper for my tastes. Ricky says 50-50. Last 2 weeks, episodes have been good. First 2, not so good. Nshuti is okay in some episodes, but not so great in others. Still doesn't quite feel like the Doctor for me. It's almost there, though. And, I think maybe there's an element of not helping the audience to get on board with Nshuti by having him be absent this week.
Yeah. Maybe. I did almost think perhaps this episode could have been a bit further into the run.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I think maybe this could have been next week's episode or the week after. I mean, I guess they're trying to be like, well, we don't want a Ruby Sunday centric episode and then do the finale, which is obviously the Legend of Ruby Sunday. Perhaps they were like,
Right.
oh, that's too much Ruby. Not for Billy, but yeah, I do feel like maybe it could have been next week's, just so we could have had a bit more of her and the Doctor. I mean,
I think there's been a bit of talk about maybe the episodes having been rejigged.
Yeah, I'd love to know what if there was an initial thought process, what that was, and who was it that then decided, oh no, shuffle them around. Yeah.
Also, Battlefield reference. How did you like that? Thank you very much for reminding, Jeff.
Battlefield reference?
£5 for a Coke.
Oh yes, I hadn't clocked that. There's a Virginia Adventures reference, isn't there? Yeah, to Cat's Cradle Witch something.
Trial.
Yeah, I can't
Witch
remember
Trap.
what it's called. I don't know. It's on the shelf.
It's on the shelf and hasn't been read because it's a Virginia Adventure.
Yes.
Every Doctor Who fan knows that feeling.
Yeah.
I almost don't want to read them because I don't want to crack the spines because they look nice on white across the shelf,
Yeah.
And also because they're mostly shite. Cinema is in the heart says, TARDIS team is very strong. Christmas special was okay. First episode awful, but the last 3 were great. And it really feels like Doctor Who is back now. Cannot wait for next week. Alan, improving, as are the scripts. This tentative tale was my cup of gin. I was beguiled, enchanted, and Russell's script demanded that you pay attention. He said something about you have to pay attention to the scrolls at the start. I think that was a bit of a...
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that did feel a bit weird. I was
Unless
thinking about
that comes up later.
Yeah, well, this is it. This is what I was thinking. Like, is this going to be something that we then return to? But it did feel a bit weird.
I'm getting a bit bored of the count the windows, count the doors. You never know what's going to happen next. They might come back. Because it's like, well, let's not beat around the bush. Less people are watching Doctor Who on broadcast now.
Yeah.
And it's fair to say that even a small percentage of the people that are contributing to the midnight viewership on Disney Plus and iPlayer are watching Unleashed or are looking at Russell's Twitter account or Instagram account. Sorry.
Yeah.
So maybe let's just tell the story on the screen a little bit. Like, people got a bit miffed about the Chibnall era not, saying too much and making it too obvious and too plain. But, this was a different matter, I think, this episode. I think people are conflating a general feeling of this with what happened in 73 Yards, because the story kind of lives and breathes on the ambiguity and not looking into it too much. But if you need to be getting cues on where the series is going, or, interesting little ventures into upcoming stories, if you need to be plugging into the ancillary shows to get that story, I don't know if that's quite the way to go about it.
No, I do feel like you need to be able to get it all just from this thing. And I mean, obviously, bloody hell, the fans, they're obviously going to be keeping their eye out on all this stuff because they're mad.
Exactly.
So we got nothing else better to do. So it's like preaching to the choir a little bit, but
totally.
Yeah,
totally.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine. What else? Any other interesting responses?
Yeah. So Lee James here says, strong actors, great presence and chemistry. First 2 eps didn't push them too much, but 3 and 4 allowed Shooty and Millie respectively to really show some range. Stories not too terrible. It's such a Doctor Who thing to say. Sometimes seem a bit overcooked. And that's another thing that was kind of thrown often at Moffat stories, especially, was you've got individual elements that would make a great story.
Yeah.
But all of them thrown into one big heap, and I think that was similar with this one, wasn't it?
Very much so. And it brings me to something that Russell and Stephen talked about last week on Doctor Who Unleashed, where they were like, well, what makes a good Doctor Who story? And then Russell said something like, oh, you can't just do aliens have taken over a factory and, anymore. He said, it needs to be more. It needs to be more. And I kind of was like, I don't think it necessarily does. I think so long as if you do it right, then it works. If you add too many things to it, that's usually when you end up falling flat, because you then don't have enough time to really have these ideas properly gestate into something good. because you're like, well, this is a good idea, but if I chuck this on top, then the two of them are like fighting each other, and oh fuck, none of them really come out of the oven baked.
Fully baked.
Yeah.
We should just quickly go back and say thank you, Renegade Productions, for the $4.99, even though it's 3 a.m. here in America. Came to hear you and Billy's review. Thank you. Thanks for being an inspiration for me, Matt, over 10 years from Donovan.
Oh, thank you, Donovan. Oh, go to bed. It's too early in the morning. It's mad. Listen to us on repeat afterwards.
Yeah. This will be up, and you can, listen to it whenever good podcasts are streamed. Loza, having a great time with this TARDIS duo. Space Babies is the only weak point of the season for me so far, but was not without its merits. I loved 73 Yards. I find Doctor Who is at its best when it leans into horror. And the last two I'll read out here. Andrew, a lot of it feels quite experimental so far. Something along the lines of, hey, we all those things we talk about that happened and couldn't do before, let's do more of that now because we can. Not in an irresponsible way, but I feel like the best is yet to come. And finally, from Joe, 73 Yards was the best of a good bunch, but yet again slipped at the end. Shooty is great with his lines, but we've yet to see his Doctor really get the best of a formidable villain on his own merit. If he could just callously blow up a spaceship human nature style, I'll be happy. That's not this Doctor, is it?
Well, you say that. I mean, he impaled the Goblin King.
He did impale the Goblin King. Yeah. Got spires up his arse. He did. That's absolutely right. Yeah. So, Matt, we're at the halfway point. How are you feeling about it so far? I mean, we haven't got to the end of the series, and I'm sure that will inform a lot of how we feel because these strands are still dangling. But where are you right now?
I'm very give or take, really. I'm not really. I said to Annie last night, I was like, I got a funny feeling that in 10 years' time, this is not going to be a series everyone talks about.
Okay.
I feel like this is going to be one that sort of slips through the cracks a little bit. Especially when I think it needed to be so big. This needed to be the one that really got everyone back into it. And I don't think it's cut the mustard in that regard. And I think maybe, this is probably a good time to talk about the viewing figures that came out the other day. So I think it's been in like the top 10 shows on Disney Plus in the US, at least for the first 2 episodes. I don't know where it is now, but obviously we had the viewing figures came out, and it was sort of like 4 million for Space Babies, and then 3.9 something for whatever the story was afterwards, Devil's Cord. Obviously, we don't know what Boom has got yet. Now, obviously, on the face of it, that does sort of make you go, oh dear, those don't sound good. It was still in the top 10 programs of the week. And I think it was still like one of the highest rated programs on the BBC for the day. So, I mean, really, it's still doing well.
Yes.
But my takeaway from it was, we were getting 6 million, 7 million for the 60th anniversary specials. Starbeast had 6 million viewers. Blue Yonder had 7 million. The Giggle had 7 million. The Church on Ruby Road had 7 million. I mean, I know that's always different because it's Christmas. But to go from that to 4 million... Clearly, that to me reads that people watched the Christmas special and 3 million people went, I ain't sticking with this. That's my concern. And I'll be honest, if I wasn't a sad bastard who had a Cyberman and a Dalek and all this stuff, I probably would have been one of them. Because I said that at Christmas. I was like, this was just like, what is this? This does not feel like Doctor Who. So I think there has been a misstep somewhere. I think they went into it with bravado, which is fine. That's what you want if you're making a TV show. You want that confidence to do something. But I think there might have needed to be some sort of an element of playing safe, which I guess they did with the specials. But maybe they needed to do that here with Shooty's first series, because I think from the Church on Ruby Road to Space Babies, that is two very iffy stories, and I don't think that's what you pin your flag in to say, look and watch our show, because I think it was. I've heard from a lot of different people that people didn't even know it was on, who are like casual Doctor Who fans, which is an issue. But I mean, I guess what else could they do in terms of publicity? It was, it's been on every magazine and everything that you can possibly think of. But yeah, casual fans that I know didn't even know it was on and have missed it. The most interesting one, living with two teachers, is that the target audience, the kids, aren't watching it. So Annie runs Doctor Who Club at her school. They love all the stuff that they've been watching. Love Christopher Eccleston. They absolutely adore Christopher Eccleston. First time watching this. Love Eccleston. Love Rose. I think a couple of them said they'd watched Space Babies, and that was it. They were like, nah, I'm not watching the rest of this. Which is interesting, I think. Year sevens this is. Like year sevens, year eights. I know Johnny said that one of his year 12s, so what's that, like 18 or 17, she was like, really not on board with this series at the moment. So I think it's kind of telling. I mean, like, obviously Doctor Who fans, God bless you all, but we'll always find something to enjoy it, within it. But I think when you start talking to the more casual audience and they start turning around and saying, nah, I'm off, that's the problem. I mean, and I think Russell's and Stephen, they've always sort of said, it's kind of irrelevant if the Doctor Who fans like the show, because
of course
we know we'll always watch it.
And you can almost now take as a measure of how many Doctor Who fans are watching it, whatever the initial iPlayer numbers were for the midnight launch, because it only would have been Doctor Who fans that were sticking around for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's, and for me, speaking to people over here, because Doctor Who is a streaming show, internationally, I was speaking to somebody yesterday at the engagement party, and he's not a Doctor Who fan, but he likes shows like Charmed, and he's fantasy and sci-fi are kind of things he's into. And he said, love Ncuti Gatwa. I'm waiting for them all to come out so I can binge them all in one go.
Interesting.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Actually seeing these sorts of numbers is irrelevant to a degree.
Yeah.
Because viewing habits have changed, and we know that from the midnight launch and how many figures that got. The fact that people are dropping off of watching terrestrial television. And I think that drop has been more severe and more steep in the last 18 months than anybody predicted.
Yeah.
I think that we're seeing that in the industry,
Yeah.
I
mean, I know a few people have sort of said, oh, well, it's launched in the summer, which is never good because more people are out and about. But I thought, crikey, really 3 million people, 3 million people. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a natural pessimist, but
I don't think so. I think that the days of Doctor Who getting, 6 million viewers outside of the specials, be they Christmas or anniversary related, I think are done. I don't think that Doctor Who gets more than, if we're basing this off of a massive launch with an actor who is beloved by the generation they're targeting this show towards. But then they're not watching TV in that way.
Yeah.
So it's almost pointless going off of the overnights. Do you know what I mean? Like, they hold even less stock now than they did when people were really hammering the Whittaker era. Like, that wasn't that long ago, but viewing habits had changed enough by then and have changed even more since then. That Doctor Who is now going for a digital first, streaming first, delivery system. And I was thinking about this the other day when I was listening back to last week's episode to try and find clippable bits for social media. And not that I'd listen to it for the sound of my own voice. I tend to try and mute it over those periods.
Yeah.
But I think Doctor Who actually, I can't believe I'm saying this after saying I love this week's episode. Doctor Who's generational.
Mm.
In terms of it getting viewing figures that are, wow, look at that. I think sometimes that only comes from people going, oh God, I remember that show.
Yes.
And introducing their kids to it.
Yes. I was thinking this the other day.
If you take Doctor Who off air now,
yeah,
give it 10 years. When it comes back, it'll be fucking enormous. Because our generation will have kids and we'll get them into it.
Mm.
I think Doctor Who is generational.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, and this is no reflection on the quality of the episodes. This is no reflection on the viewing figures.
No.
I'm not saying this because of either of those things, because generally I'm enjoying the series and the viewing figures generally are kind of meaningless at this point.
I mean, it's still doing well. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, it's still in the top 10 shows of the week. So I mean, you cannot grumble at
Disney,
that,
like you said.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm not saying that because of this. This is almost a separate point to Doctor Who being on air at the moment. I think Doctor Who has run out of steam with this generation.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And I think it needs. Oh, it sounds so weird to say it as a Doctor Who fan. You know, you don't want your favorite show to go off air because if they take it off air for a break, there's no guarantee it's going to come back. And we will, of course, lament Doctor Who not being on TV.
Yeah.
But there is an element of me that thinks that it has had an incredible run on television.
Yeah.
And maybe it's time for it to be taken off the air because absence makes the heart grow fonder. And then you'll have a whole generation that aren't jaded about that old show. No, my dad watched that when it was black and white, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, those kids their parents aren't quite that old, but you know, oh, my dad hated the guy with the cropped haircut, you know.
Yeah.
It has its ebbs and its flows. It expands and it contracts. And maybe now wasn't the right time to go for we're going to make this the Marvel of science fiction and fantasy, and now we're going to have all these spin-off shows and construct the universe.
I know.
I think maybe that was bad timing.
I certainly think so. I think, you know, you've got to think of it in terms of stuff like, think of it like James Bond, you know. James Bond, we, you know, have a film every 3 years. We've now reached the point after a successful term with one actor, you know, the Broccolis have clearly gone, well, that's done. And we're not going to move forward until we're absolutely certain in what we want to do next and who we want to do it with. And I think Doctor Who is a bit like that. It's the same with everything. Look at Marvel. Look at how Marvel, which was this huge thing, has now just really seeped into depths of like, no one is watching this stuff.
I had to have a look the other day to see when the last one was in the cinemas.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you. Coming out.
Because
it just doesn't seem like they're coming out with any kind of regularity or being trailed with any kind of sense of there's a new Marvel movie coming out, you know, unless it's Guardians or Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it's the same with Star Wars. You know, Star Wars has the same problem where it has got to this point where, you know, when a new one came out, because it was such a big span of time between them, it was huge. And then when The Force Awakens came out, it was huge. And then subsequently, because Disney and, you know, all these sort of corporate things have this thing of like, no, we've got to keep it going. You know, we got to keep that money coming in. You get them so regularly that then the fatigue sets in. And it's like, well, if it's not in the cinemas, it needs to be on the streaming services or whatever. So I certainly do think that maybe Doctor Who did need a rest. I know it wasn't the best timing because it was the anniversary. But, you know, we had a 40th anniversary that sort of went with a whimper, you know. I think it is one of those things where, you know, we also need a new generation of executive producers, you know. Love Russell T Davies and Steve Moffat and everything, but it does feel like this show is just getting passed around the same circle of people. Now, maybe the BBC don't have confidence in someone else coming in and taking it over. That's fine. But maybe you don't flog the horse, you know? Maybe you do say, well, you know, we can make money from it in other ways. You know, there's loads of other stuff you can do. But maybe it needs to wait until someone walks into that boardroom and says, hey, remember this show? I've got a vision for it that has not been done before, and this is how I see it. This is who, you know, this is what it would look like. Yeah, I don't know. And that person is me.
I think you're right with it being passed around the same number of people. You know, let's be frank. Nobody wanted the job, and there was nobody qualified to do that job other than people who had already done it.
Yeah.
You know, there's and that the BBC trusted to get a show like Doctor Who right, where you, to an extent, have to please fans because it has to be a level of continuity that satisfies that audience.
Yeah.
But then, you know, and pays homage. You can't ignore the fact that all that stuff has just come before. Unless you have 15 years off air and reboot it and do what Russell did and don't really acknowledge what's come prior.
Yeah. And
I think, like you were saying, though, with trying the same things by having the same people on the show.
Yeah.
In a streaming world now where people are even more fickle with keeping on board with certain things if it just isn't up to their tastes. Yeah. Doctor Who can't really do that thing anymore where this week is a bit of a lighter one. Come back next week if you fancy that. Yeah. Because it's still being released week to week on streaming. If you put all of them out in one go and had 13 or 20 episodes or something, and you allowed people to pick and choose, a bit like X-Files with the Monster of the Week and the ones you actually need to watch to follow the strands, that's fine. But Doctor Who can't afford to have lame ducks in its running.
No. And especially not at the beginning. Because
not at the beginning.
Because the audience now, we're so fickle and there's so much choice that it only takes only takes 10 minutes for someone to watch it and go, nah, that ain't for me. And that's it. That's them done. That's like, I'm not even going to bother watching the next one, you know? It's really difficult. And I mean, at the end of the day, you know, obviously, you know, Russell's in his 60s now. You know, this is targeted for a whole new generation. You know, I know less about Gen Z, and I'm fucking 32. You know, so what hope do these blokes in their 50s and 60s have about, you know, getting that audience? You know, if at my bloody work we ended up hiring someone to run TikTok because none of us old buggers in our 30s knew what TikTok was, you know, how do we work with that in a global sense? You know, it's really tricky. You know, I don't think there's a definitive answer, but I think these are the sort of things that we need to sort of question. Is like, well, you know, how do we tackle this problem? How do we? I mean, it's the same for television in general. I think it was interesting. I think it was Mark Wade, as a comic book writer, posted something the other day. I can't remember what the website was, but Disney Plus had done some sort of survey, and apparently, like, Gen Z just, they have no interest in Marvel, they have no interest in Star Wars, and this writer basically said, oh, I went over to my friends in New York, and he's got a son, however old, and he asked him about, oh, have you been watching the Marvel stuff or whatever, you know, as you probably would to a kid of that age, and he was like, no, that's for dads. For dads, you know? And he's like, what the fuck? And he was like, he turned around to him and said, asked him about like Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And he said it was like I was asking him about Edwardian fiction. You know, he just looked at me cockled, like, why would I watch that old shit? And so you're like, well, what, you know, what hope do we have? It's the children who are wrong. That's the problem.
It is the children who are wrong. I mean, let's just be frank about this. It's the children that are going to ruin our program.
Yeah.
It's never happened before with Doctor Who where somebody who has run the show for that long has come back after such an absence.
Yeah.
And has written so much great stuff in the intervening years, but actually hasn't written for that audience since.
Yes.
And had it right at the right time with the right people to get a show off the ground, like the Sarah Jane Adventures or like Torchwood.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can do that now, because fundamentally you can put the back catalogue on BBC iPlayer, but who below the age of and ignoring the chat for a bit, apologies, because I know that if you're below this age group, you are all going to say me. But of your peers you go to school with who have no interest in Doctor Who or sci-fi or fantasy or anything like that, who is using iPlayer for anything?
Yeah.
Of a certain age group to access, anything. You can put Doctor Who on the front page if you want, but Disney Plus is the only way you're going to get that audience to pay attention to your show. So to bring it back round to what we were saying at the start, the viewing figures don't matter, especially for the BBC, and almost iPlayer is different because it's an equivalent to what we have with Disney Plus, but it's a smaller sample size because it's just the United Kingdom. You're not getting a different service by watching it on the iPlayer. So it's not like people are using VPNs to access it and you can say that is adding to that number, because that just is not the case. Disney Plus and its success with Disney Plus is what keeps the show on the air.
Yeah.
And I don't think that this way of telling stories and this way of being, Doctor Who in the 21st century is going to lead to this show being renewed and continued success on Disney Plus. If they had approached it more like Flux did, and you tell a story per season and you serialize it, that is way more, because people don't have a reason to binge it and tune in each week.
Yeah.
If you didn't,
I think that's what we said, didn't we, actually, when Flux aired? I think we both sort of said this is probably the route to go down moving forward, is that you have that one story to tell. And all right, maybe, each week the story is different, but you've still got that strong thread going through. Obviously, what we've got here with the current series is far more of a Series 1 Russell T Davies, Bad Wolf, or Mr. Saxon, all those sorts of things, which is great, and I love that stuff. And I'm enjoying it here. I'm enjoying. I want to know what the mystery is of Ruby. She's her own mum. I want to know, who Mrs. Susan Twist is, or whatever. I and Mrs. Flood and all that sort of stuff.
She's the Rani.
She is the Rani. Yeah. So I that stuff is great, but like you said, for modern audiences, maybe that is not the way to do it. They want that.
It totally isn't. Think of The Devil's Chord. I know you liked it, but that whole, music battle.
Oh,
that is
Christ.
Who have got somebody who doesn't give a shit about Doctor who thought, okay, Space Babies was all right, but okay, let's try this one. It's got the Beatles in it. And then that happens. I guarantee you, Gen Zers all over the planet would have gone, fuck off. This is shit. And that would have been clipped and put on Twitter going, I can't believe this is a real TV show. And it's just those 3 seconds. But then you miss Boom, which is brilliant and a great, is a great story and is more in line with the kind of thing I think that, and I'm not saying this because I liked it, but I think it's not fucking cringe for a start. There are cringe things in it, but I think that cringe factor actually has a big part to play in whether or not people stick around with shows like this.
Yeah.
And I think that, I'm not saying that camp equals cringe.
No.
But I think if you're watching Doctor Who like a streaming TV show where you can tune out at any moment and it doesn't affect the ongoing story that you're watching, I think that has a massive part to play in whether or not people are going to bother to carry on watching it. Yeah, Riz Battle. Thank you very much, Adam. Riz Battle. That would have been way better. Then you miss out on an episode like Boom. Then you miss out on an episode like 73 Yards.
Yeah.
And you have to then go into your place of work or your school or whatever and say, oh, no, really, honestly, guys, this week's Doctor Who was really good. It's not the kind of world in which we watch content now where you say, watch this week's one because it was good.
Yeah.
You say, have you been watching?
Yes. Yeah.
How has that been going? I can't believe that they revealed that this week, and next week's, oh my God, they're going to finally do blah.
Yeah.
And I think that doing Doctor Who like it was in 2005, 2006, 2003 doesn't work now.
No.
And I think that it's that tried and tested thing that is actually now tired and tested. It's worked, but it doesn't work for this generation, I don't think. I'm not that generation, but you saying that, Annie's school kids are not watching it.
Yeah, that's the damning thing. Is when you think,
damning.
shit, And she sort of said to me, she's like, I want to show them the new stuff because it's the new stuff, but they're just like, nah, we'd rather watch this one, or this Christopher Eccleston one, or this Matt Smith one, or David Tennant. So it's weird.
I was working on that boarding school show.
Yeah.
And the girls, I kind of would ask the girl, do you know what a Dalek is? Do you know Doctor Who? Yeah, I love Doctor Who. It's great. They, had a vague idea of it was on. It was a program that my dad watched, like you said, or whatever. But I kind of put that down to, well, I guess it has receded into itself a little bit in the Jodie Whittaker era. It isn't putting itself out as a promotion vehicle as much anymore.
Yeah.
But now I don't think it's fair to say that the damage had been done, and we're feeling the effects of kids of that generation not watching because of the underexposure of the show under Chris Chibnall, because you had the 60th and that got really good viewing figures and people seem to be buzzed about Doctor Who again. We've come back around to doing Doctor Who like it's always been done, and that is not enough now.
Yeah.
It needs to be doing something different because it's not, and maybe doing series 1 and 2 back to back, and you've said it before, was a bad call.
Yeah.
Because it's going to bear out in the viewing figures on the BBC, which again don't really matter all that much. But if it's not bearing out in the playground, at the water cooler at work, in the canteen at school, in the shower room at Borstal, then it's not having the effect that you want it to have.
Yeah, and I think, obviously everyone will say, well, so long as Disney Plus is all right, then that's all that matters, which is fine. But Disney Plus have a habit of cutting shows like that without a second thought. And not only do they cut it, they take it off the bloody app, and that's it. It was like it was never on there. So, really this needed to be something big. I mean, what's Doctor Who to Disney? Nothing. It's like a speck, it's like a sesame seed on a burger, of content,
and quite telling the way that they've kind of BBC Presents.
Yeah.
They're kind of going, we're just hosting this thing, which is such a great get out of jail free card for them, because they can just say, well, we have hosted great TV from international broadcasters. That's just one of the things that we do.
Yeah.
We did Doctor Who for 2 years, and people seem to really kind of think it was maybe all right.
Yeah. And this is it. So I worry in that regard. I mean, it's very, people say, well, it's in the top 10 shows. It was in the top 10 shows that first week with the big launch, but it'd be interesting to see where it is now. Is it still in the top 10? Has it completely fizzled off? I think it's in the top 10 in certain countries. But, is it top 10 in the States? That's where it kind of feels that it needs to be in the top 10, So I don't know. I mean, on the flip side of that, you then have the cinema release for the finale over here in the UK, and people, going to go and watch the finale of Doctor Who at midnight when it comes out. And I think it's sold incredibly well. And lots of people I saw on Twitter were like, oh, well, it's selling so well and people are saying Doctor Who's not popular. But I think you need to think of it in the grand scheme of things. How many cinemas are there that are showing this thing across the country? How many Doctor Who fans are there across the country? I mean, Doctor Who
per screen. How many seats in per screen per cinema? If you look at, I don't know, is it one view per major city?
Yeah, I guess that's it. It's a one and done thing. It's not being played on a loop.
Tell me, it's impressive when it sells out in Merthyr Tydfil. It's impressive when it sells out in Gateshead.
Yeah,
it's impressive when it sells out in a tiny cinema in the Lake District.
Yeah,
it's not.
Which are not the places that will be showing it. It's just going to be the big cities, And obviously initially, there was a lot of problems. I think that View couldn't get the tickets up, or there were a few places that didn't do it, and then then places sold out because obviously you had this deluge of Doctor Who fans being like, oh shit, I can't watch it at this cinema. Well, this cinema's showing it. I'll drive 5 miles and, book a seat there. Oh, it's sold out. Wow, we are so back. And it's like, now View have listed it, and there's still probably, 30 seats or something in their different screenings. So, I mean, yeah, these things are always going to do well because there is a fan base there that want to go and do that. Not me, on the other hand. You know, as David Brent would say, I would never pay for it. So, yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I think it's brilliant that we're getting this stuff. I think that's great. You know, it does show confidence in the brand. Which is a weird thing to say, isn't it? The brand. But yeah, I don't think we can necessarily hang everything on the fact that some cinema screenings sold out. Do you know what I mean?
I'm having a look now at some of the screening locations, and you know, if you want to go to Rill, there are tickets available.
Right.
If you want to go to Leamington Spa, there are seats available. If you want to go to, let's pick somewhere totally out of the way.
Josh here has just said Cineworld added screenings because of its competitors selling out. View had to add extra screenings as well. I mean, and that's great. That's amazing. But imagine if people were to look at this and go, oh, well, we could do a Doctor Who film. You know, that is, you know, you could not tally those two things, you know?
You could do a screening of a Doctor Who episode in a cinema like they're doing here.
Yes.
Based off of these numbers.
Yeah.
But
that's it, isn't it? You know, and obviously it's the new episode, so everyone wants to go and see it, you know, and, you know, I mean, I am not the person to advocate this sort of thing because nothing would be worse than, for me, than staying up at midnight and trying to watch Doctor Who with a sea of other Doctor Who fans, you know, jeering and cackling and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, no, I need to listen to what's being said. I need to hear things. So, you know, I am not the target audience for that.
Volk Smash has just put something very interesting. I live in Christchurch, New Zealand. Our local Hoyts has said they might be screening the finale as it releases on Disney Plus. Nice too, because that's 11 a.m. for us.
Oh.
Yes, it fucking is, Volk Smash. And I tell you what, I'm not going to be there. Just like Matt said, I could not stand watching Doctor Who with Doctor Who fans.
I was just about to say, I bet you're going to be there now, but it's like
not a chance. Although
there's only 6 Doctor Who fans in New Zealand, surely. Come on.
And I'm 3 of them. Gateshead, I was joking. Gateshead does have a Doctor Who screening, and they've got 2 screens, so tickets are available for Screen 1 and Screen 2 at 11 p.m. if people want it. So we liked this week's episode of Doctor Who, but Doctor Who does need to be cancelled, is what we've come round to.
Oh dear. Oh. You wouldn't get this on the official podcast, would you?
You wouldn't. But that's a great indication of the audience they're going for.
Yes,
isn't it?
Yeah,
Or the audience they're attempting to go for. And
yeah.
I put a thing defending the podcast on Twitter, and the number of people that were just like, but it's actually shit though, and it's like, but it's not. It's not for you.
Yeah.
That's that specific clip of them doing it's giving Mars kind of thing, you know.
I sort of watched it. I didn't really understand what they were saying. You know that vine of the old lady listening to the rap in her car, and she'd go, "What are they saying?" That was me. What are they saying?
You know, they were kind of talking about Ruby. You know, Ruby's going to be doing TikTok dances in the TARDIS, and she'll be posting things on her Snapchat going, you know, just about to step out on a new planet. It's giving Mars, you know, all that kind of shit.
Oh, I see.
And it's kind of like, I mean, that's her.
I
almost
wish they'd have done something like that, and the Doctor was like, whoa, you cannot be posting this shit on social media, and like zaps her phone with the Sonic and deletes it all.
That would have been great. You know, that clip that was going around was a joke.
Yeah.
You know, it was them having fun at imagine if she did that in the TARDIS, Gen Z speak like this kind of thing. But you know, that's the audience they're going for. I'm not saying that the big figures for that on YouTube bear out that audience doesn't exist, because it does exist. The fact that people are watching it regardless of the viewing figures, the fact that it's like number 1 on the podcasting charts means it is being listened to, because there are shows going out now that have companion podcasts that do really well, and it's still number 1 most weeks.
Yeah.
But that's the audience they're going for. I just don't think that the way that the show is telling those stories and the release thing, it's still stuck in 2005. It's still stuck in, yes, we have made allowances and gone for the digital streaming first thing, but the actual content and the actual stories are not giving Gen Z.
Yeah.
But continue to subscribe to the second official Doctor Who podcast, The Review of Death.
Yes.
For more merriment and enjoyment of Doctor Who in general.
Yeah. Sorry to ruin your Sunday by all this doom and
go
gloom.
into the world and have a terrible time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Gen Z, though. Rod is for the dads and the people in the 30s. Yeah. I mean, actually, looking at the statistics, we get a lot of, 18 to 25-year-olds. That's like a big demographic, or maybe younger.
It's vibes. It's
vibes,
the sexual tension is vibes.
Yeah, that's it. It's not cringe.
It's not. It is so not wow cringe. So, I mean, I'm not going to watch Doctor Who next week. What about you?
Yeah. I'm going to go watch Pyramids of Mars instead.
Good lad.
On VHS.
Like a real weirdo. Dot and Bubble next week. It's got a monster in it.
Yes. Big snail man.
It's exciting.
Men.
Big snail person. Which is very exciting.
Yeah.
So we'll look forward to that being the highlight. And there's more things happening within that 50 minutes, apparently. But I'm just here for the snail.
Yeah, you're here for the snail. Apparently, it was a story that Russell pitched to Stephen Moffat when Moffat was showrunner, but it was too expensive.
Interesting.
But now it's not too expensive because the mouse is
mouse money.
Yeah, mouse money.
The mouse has flashed his checkbook. Ha! You want slugs? Have 50 of them. Ha!
Very good.
So I tell you what, if you do want something that good to watch on Disney Plus this week, go on the Disney Plus shorts, the Disney Animation Studios short section, and watch the short film they did to celebrate 100 years of Disney Animation Studios.
Oh, cool.
That was fucking brilliant. And it's all the animated characters coming together for like a 5-minute thing, running around the animation studio, and it's so good.
Oh,
so
I
many
that.
great references.
Oh, I'll watch that. That sounds good.
It was where that clip comes from of people were sharing on Twitter of Mickey going up to the framed picture of Walt. And sort of shedding a tear or whatever, and
Seacoiling him.
Yeah, I hate them too. Yeah. So Dot and Bubble next week. I hope we are here to bring better news.
Every time you say Dot and Bubble, I think of Dot Cotton and I don't know.
Bubble from Big Brother. Wasn't there a Big Brother contestant called Bubble?
There might have been. There might have been.
I'm going to have to Google that now. Thank you for coming with us on this journey chat. I hope that we haven't ruined your day. Look, at the end of the day, Doctor Who's still on air, so we should all be celebrating that and enjoying it.
It's always me that brings the tone down. Sorry.
I know, but I was thinking about it last week. I was thinking, it started with the Doctor Who is generational thing. And has now turned into Doctor Who deserves to be taken off the air. But that was my initial thought, was like, it has its moments of mass popularity, and then it wanes, and then it comes back. But it doesn't, even in the classic series, it never came back while the show was still on air to those heydays. I think it may have been a bit fickle of them to think that could happen again, because history has told us otherwise. Somebody in the chat earlier said we are now somewhere near the Peter Davison era in terms of the show's running. And that was, we've said it before, is when the rot set in. I mean, some people would probably say it happened during the Whittaker era. They'd be wrong, but especially with a series like Flux, he's wrong. But it's Doctor Who. I think I was taken off the air.
I was thinking earlier the other day, I was like, oh Christ, we're going to watch this series, and then this bastard's going to say, right, let's do The Woman Who Fell to Earth. I was like, God.
We are.
God,
I mean, actually, no, we've got Death to the Daleks to come before then, so you've got a little bit of a respite.
Yes. Good.
And you've got your
job.
holiday. I did feel a bit of like a clarity wash over me then going, oh, yes, Exelon. I can return to my place with my people.
Yeah. Quarries.
God, I might get my fucking invitation rescinded to Worlds of Wonder now that I've read all of this. Doctor Who should be off the air. Oh dear.
Well, yeah, that was 73 yards.
Which was fucking brilliant.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, well, join us next time for Dot and Bubble, and yeah, thank you everybody for coming in and joining us at this early hour in the morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on because I mean I've got plenty to say about MCM and like the lack of new merch. You know, I think that's another big issue. You know, why were we not?
Who would buy them? Who would buy them, Matt?
But that is true. That is the problem. You know,
collectors. That's why it's in B&M. That's why it's got the collectors stuff stamped on the front. Who would buy them?
I was saying the other day, I think, you know, anyone who was thinking, oh yeah, this is gonna be Toys R Us 2007 all over again. Wow, you better take a shot of the coffee because you need to wake up. It ain't gonna happen. It is not gonna happen. I will be shocked if we get more figures beyond Shooty and Ruby. Let's put it that way. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been told anything, but I haven't got a clue. But I just think the way things are going, I can't see there being an audience for that kind of thing, which is a shame because obviously, you know, I love the toys and I want my Wrath Warrior and my Meep.
Yeah.
But I do really worry and think, is this ever going to come out? And is it too late now? You know,
I think it's too late. I mean, certainly for something as marketable as the Meep.
Yeah.
And you could say that the effect of the program on retailers during the Whittaker era has more to say for this.
Yeah.
But as you say, action figure sales across the board are going down anyway.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, even the way that people look at plastic and the use of plastic is probably affecting people's purchasing.
Yeah.
Certainly with the generation of our generation that are now becoming parents are now thinking about plastic a lot more and their consumption of it.
Not me, with all my thousands of dollars.
Absolutely not.
I don't care about the bloody plastics as long as I get my figures.
Somebody said here, Mad World NZ says, quickly lads, any thoughts on the missing episode updates with Film is Fabulous and the Melbourne Hoarder, which sounds like the world's most boring serial killer. I don't know. I've heard that there's been a big haul of tapes, and we know that, you know, there are people with private collections that have episodes of Doctor Who. So we'll see if that bears out at any point.
Yeah, but okay, we'll see. I mean, obviously, as big Doctor Who toy man, I hope that the toys happen, you know, and I hope there is life in the toys. I just can't see it at the moment. Seeing the reception to the series, I just don't see that happening.
Where are the new recons? You know, are we going to get any news about more colorized Doctor Who?
Yeah.
I think
that's
sort of stuff. Going to be an indication that this hasn't worked as well.
Yeah. Very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how things move on once this series is aired in terms of merch and ancillary stuff that comes out. I do wonder if the Whoniverse might have been over-egging the pudding a little bit. I do, every time I see that turn up before an episode, I do sort of go, is it though? Is it though? You know?
Yeah.
But hey, there we go. So yes, goodbye from us two miserable bastards.
The review of Death is back.
Yes,
Doctor Who might not be back, but we are.
Yes, we are so back. I hate that, but that's what we are. We never left. Right, so thank you very much. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and all of those other lovely things that help us out. Thank you to everyone who donated. That was very, very kind of you. And once again, thank you for waking up early to listen to us rabbit on and be miserable buggers. But we did enjoy the episode. It was really good.
We did.
Check it out. And yeah, we'll see you all next time for Dot and Bubble and the Snail People. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Is that what the Target novelization says on the front?
Yes.
Doctor Who and the Snail People.
Doctor Who and the Snail People. The social media snail men. Yeah. Bye.